Hi, welcome to Painting with Katie. Today we are going to be painting Cranberry Lake, and this is the beautiful sunset we will be modifying and making our own. So I'm using a 16 by 20 canvas. You could use paper or whatever you have. I'm just starting by making a horizontal line near the middle, which will be my horizon line. I'm using acrylic paint. Blue, yellow, and red are fine. If you have purple or violet or orange, you definitely can use those as well. You will also need white and black. So to start, I'm just kind of making blue and violet and mixing them together and then mixing the white. So I want kind of a medium value, and I'm going to start darker at the top and go lighter towards the bottom to that line we made. So I'm using a 1.5 inch brush. I'd use something larger. If you have a sponge brush, that would work fine too. But you really just want to kind of get a first coat on your canvas today. I know just the temperature today and the humidity, my paint's drying really fast. So that might affect the way your colors blend and appear. So now as I'm kind of approaching my line that I made, I want to go a little lighter. So I'm going to add white and blend it out and become a little lighter towards that line. And then I notice in my picture it kind of becomes like a pink, purple. So you can definitely make this your own however you'd like, but I'm just going to take a little red. My red has some orange in it already, but I'm going to add a little yellow. Make sure your brush is really clean. I always kind of get my colors muddied up. So the blue and the red will make violet, but mine is kind of getting muddy as I mix in the blue, so just be careful with that. But I'm just going to go back and forth. Make sure you're doing horizontal strokes back and forth and just kind of blending the paint into one another, so that light blue will kind of blend into the pink, and if you want to add more white in there, that's definitely fine. So our mountains will go on top of that pink area in time, but we're going to mix some more colors into the sky as we progress. So I'm going to actually put my base coat for the water down while I'm doing the sky. So I want to go a little lighter. It's going to be almost white near where the mountains and the water meet, but I'm going to start with like a light pink. And the picture kind of transitions into like a blue and a dark blue. So similar to the sky, but I'm going to do more pink than blue this time. So I'm going to pull my pink down and then transition it lighter with white, and then I'm going to try to move into my blue. Some ideas, if you want to make a darker blue, which I'm going to do in a minute, I'm going to mix blue and a little violet, but I'm also going to mix red in there, and that will kind of, because blue and orange are complements, they're going to make the value darker, and because my red has a little orange, it's going to make my blue a little darker in this case. But you could always mix a little yellow in there too, or you can play around with that as well. So I'm going to make a darker blue and then kind of transition it with my white into my pink that I have already made. And again, this is just your base coat. Also, you may want to, if you're working with a canvas that has edges, you'll want to paint the edges as you go. I find sometimes if I let my paint dry and then I go paint my edges, then I get the paint on top of my canvas and it becomes a mess. So just kind of think about that as you're going, so you edge your canvas. I just pulled in a little blue near the horizon line. We'll do more of this later, but it's water, so it can be very loose feeling. And as you can see, I'm coming in and adding a little bit more of the darker red with the white. And in the picture, there's a little lightness towards the top. So I'm gonna just kind of put white in first, I would suggest. Anywhere you want to put another color, I would suggest put white first, because otherwise they'll get muddy really fast. And with the white, you can lighten it, and then you can add your color on top later. And I'm just pulling in some blue in the water too, with the reflections and the shadows in there. And we'll do more down in the water as we go too. I find I can blend my paint really well if I just keep going back and forth. You can take a little water, just be careful you don't get it too wet, or it'll kind of take your color off. So I do a lot of like dry brushing, so I kind of clean my brush off and go back and forth and just kind of pull the colors lightly. Less is more in the blending process, and you can always, cover it up, and it is forgiving, but it requires some patience sometimes too. So I kind of got my sky to a place where I'd like, and I'm gonna start to take a thinner brush, and with my black acrylic paint, I'm just gonna draw in where I want my mountains to be. So right on that horizon where the sky is meeting the land, that's where the bottom of my mountains are going to be. And then I'm just kind of starting higher on the left, and then making my way down a little bit gradually on the right. So these can be jagged on the top to give it a little bit of texture of like trees or the mountains themselves. So I'm using kind of a brush that has some bristles that would give me a little texture, and I'm filling it in, but I'm also dabbing a little bit near the top to create that texture of the mountains. And you may need to do a couple coats of this. Also, in between the sky and the mountains, I kind of let my paint dry. You can also take a hair dryer if you want to speed up the process a little bit. So I did do 2 coats of this, and I kind of let my black dry, and then I came back and did it again. Now that I have my mountains in, I'm going to kind of put in some clouds in the sky. So you want to make sure your sky is dry when you do this, or it'll just kind of blend into itself. So I'm just adding some white clouds at this point, and I want to put some yellow in, but I want the yellow to stand out. So I'm just kind of doing some little strokes that are horizontal in my clouds. You can pull in more colors too, blues, purples, violets, more of the red. And once I kind of let that dry, I'm also gonna put yellow on top or near it. So a good thing to remember when you're painting anything is that if you want a color to show up and it's next to another color, you want to have a value change. So you either need one of the colors to be darker and one of the colors to be lighter. So the yellow is a similar value as my red. So by adding the white to it, it's going to help make it pop out. And I later, after everything dries, I went back in and kind of pulled in some of these clouds. Now, if you're happy with your sky, you can leave it as is. If you want to add more details, you can go for it. But if you feel confident with where it's at, don't feel like you have to keep going with it. Also, on the corners, in a little bit, we're gonna add some like tree branches. So if you have a spot you're not crazy about, or it didn't blend the way you wanted, it's a perfect way to cover it up. So again, here I'm just pulling in a little bit more of that pink to make it brighter. I also came in later and did a little more purple violet that had that was a lighter value. Also on the left, there was like a darker cloud, so you can pull that in too if you want. But again, if you are happy and content, leave it as it is. That is fine. So now I'm just going to add a little bit to the water, and I want to make sure that that light value is touching my mountains. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the red, and you can also kind of create an area where there's a reflection, or if you want to leave it like this, that's fine too. So I'm just pulling in a little red on the right, and you can pull more red in the sky, and it's okay if it's not perfectly blended, because the water has areas that are darker and lighter, so it kind of gives it that water feel. On the left side, it's a little darker, so that's why I'm not pulling in as much red. Also, there were some like little reflections on the bottom, so I just kind of did a little bit of the red here and there, and then I came in with a little bit of a lighter value too, just so that it would make it pop. So to kind of make that reflection and a pop of light, I'm going to pull in that white in the middle, and I'm just going to accent my clouds a little bit. And if you wanted to add a little sun setting, that would be great too. And then the strokes are longer near the horizon, and then they're going to get smaller as I move away. So it'll be kind of like a stretched out triangle. I'm also just pulling in some darker value on the left, bottom left, because the darker, the water got a little darker in that area. So that'll also add some contrast to your water. You can add a little bit of black with the blue too, that'll darken it up. And I'm just kind of pulling and blending and making it kind of work together. And then I'm just adding a little white there so that I can blend out my blue so it's not as harsh. And on the left, I'm just pulling a little more red, and I'm pulling that into the white just to make it stand out more. Just kind of pulling out my colors so that they aren't too muted and that they stand out against the other colors. Now I'm gonna I have a sponge. If you don't have a sponge, you can do this with a brush, or if you have like a sponge, a clean sponge you use to wash dishes, you could use that. Just cut off a piece of it. You might want to practice, or if you have like a sponge brush, you can practice with that first. Make sure it gives you the look that you want. I have a natural sponge I'm using, but I'm just dipping it in the black, and then I'm just dabbing it onto my canvas to give some trees at the top and then a little brush on the bottom. It also helps to frame my sunset a little bit too, and help you to draw into the mountain range and the sky. Again, you can do as much of this as you want, as little as you want. It helps me because I had an area I didn't like, so I covered it up with the brush. And again, I just showed you, I did take a brush. You can use that brush to make those marks too. And I'm just coming in again with my white. I'm just pulling in some of the white, a little bit more clouds, those wispy clouds, to just draw attention to the horizon area. The white works a lot stronger when the paint is dry, so it just helps to make those pops of color. And then I'm just coming into and doing that on my horizon line as well with the water and the reflection, and just kind of making some of those last minute details. I hope you have fun. Send me your paintings. I can't wait to see them. This is mine. I just added a little bit more colors to enrich it a little bit, and have a great day.